The rain didn't just fall in Seattle. It hammered against the floor-to-ceiling glass of the Sterling estate, like 1,000 frantic fingers trying to get in. Inside, the air smelled of expensive sandalwood and the sharp, metallic tang of aged scotch. Emily stood in the shadow of the grand foyer, her back straight, her hands clasped loosely in front of her. To anyone passing by, she looked like a statue, a part of the expensive decor that Liam Sterling had curated to show the world he had arrived. "Emily, where the hell is my coat?" The voice boomed from the living room, jagged and impatient. It was a voice that never asked, only commanded. Emily didn't flinch. She moved. Her steps were different than a normal woman's. They were silent, not because she was sneaking, but because her weight was perfectly distributed, her center of gravity so low and stable that she barely disturbed the air. She picked up the handmade Italian wool coat from the marble bench and walked toward the noise. In the living room, Liam stood surrounded by his inner circle, 3 men in tailored suits who laughed at everything he said as if their lives depended on it. Beside him sat Chloe, a woman 10 years younger than Emily, wearing a dress that cost more than Emily's entire childhood home. "Here, Liam," Emily said softly. Her voice was like silk over gravel, calm, yet carrying a weight she tried hard to hide. Liam didn't look at her. He didn't even reach for the coat. He just stood there, letting her hold it like a servant. "Tell me, boys," Liam smirked, gesturing toward Emily without turning his head. "Have you ever seen anyone so invisible? I could leave her in a room for 3 days and forget she exists. Honestly, it's her best quality." The men erupted into laughter. Jason, a man with predatory eyes and a weak chin, leaned forward. "Is she always this quiet, Sterling? Or did you finally find the mute button?" "She knows her place," Liam replied, finally snatching the coat from her hands. "Don't you, Emily?" Emily looked him directly in the eyes. Most people would have seen submission. But deep in the black of her pupils, there was a flicker, a spark of something ancient and dangerous, a memory of a wooden floor in a mountain temple, the smell of incense, and the feeling of her knuckles hitting solid oak until they bled. A dragon does not bark at dogs, her Sefue had told her a decade ago. A dragon waits for the mountain to move. "I know my place, Liam," she said, her voice devoid of emotion. "Good. Then go to the kitchen and make sure the catering staff doesn't steal the silver. And stay out of the way tonight. We have real people coming over. People with influence. I don't need you dragging down the mood with that depressing aura of yours." He brushed past her, his shoulder slamming into hers with intentional force. He expected her to stumble. He wanted her to feel small. But Emily didn't move. Liam hit her shoulder like he had hit a brick wall. He was the one who stumbled back, his scotch splashing onto his white shirt. "Watch it!" Liam snapped, his face reddening. "You're so clumsy. God, Emily, can you do anything right?" "I'm sorry, Liam," she murmured, though she hadn't moved an inch. She watched them walk away, their laughter echoing through the hall. She waited until the front door slammed shut as they headed to the pre-party. The house was finally silent. Emily walked to the center of the living room. She closed her eyes. The rain outside seemed to sync with her heartbeat. She breathed in, deep into her diaphragm, and out. Slowly, she raised her right hand. She didn't make a fist. She extended her fingers, her palm facing the air. There, in the center of her palm, was a scar. It looked like a jagged burn, but to the trained eye, It was the silhouette of a coiled dragon. She moved her arm in a sudden, blurred motion, a strike so fast it whistled through the air. She stopped an inch away from a crystal vase on the mantel. The vase didn't move, but the water inside it rippled violently from the sheer kinetic force of her proximity. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. It was a burner phone, hidden in a compartment of her purse that Liam didn't know existed. She pulled it out. One encrypted message was waiting. The shadows are moving in the east. The tiger has fallen. The dragon is the only one left. Are you still among the living? Emily stared at the screen. For 3 years, she had tried to be Emily Sterling. She had tried to be the wife who forgave, the woman who stayed quiet, the soul that sought peace after a lifetime of war. She looked at the red wine stain on the rug where Liam had spilled his drink. She looked at the divorce papers she had found hidden in his desk earlier that day. The ones where he planned to take her family's dojo and leave her with nothing. The piece was over. She typed back a single word. Awake. She tucked the phone away and walked toward the basement. She didn't turn on the lights. She didn't need them. She moved through the darkness like she was a part of it. In the corner of the gym, behind a false wall, sat a wooden trunk. It was old, smelling of cedar and old blood. She opened it. On top lay a black silk sash. It was frayed at the edges, worn from years of sweat and combat. Beneath it was a set of steel needles and a specialized tactical headset. Emily picked up the sash. She tied it around her waist over her simple house dress. The moment the knot tightened, the quiet wife vanished. Her posture changed. Her gaze sharpened into a deadly, focused point. The world thought she was a victim. Liam thought she was a trophy he could discard. They were about to learn that the most dangerous weapon in the world isn't a gun or a bomb. It's a woman who has nothing left to lose and a decade of lethal training she's been itching to use. The morning after, the gala didn't bring sunlight. It brought a cold, gray fog that clung to the windows of the Sterling estate, like a shroud. Liam hadn't come home. He didn't need to. Emily knew exactly where he was. She stood in the kitchen, her movements mechanical yet precise, brewing coffee she knew would go cold. On the counter lay a manila envelope she had intercepted from the mail an hour ago. Inside was a survey map of her father's dojo, the Dragon's Nest. Liam had already marked it with red ink. Proposed site, Golden Vista Casino. He wasn't just leaving her. He was planning to bulldoze her soul for a profit. The front door clicked open. Liam walked in, smelling of expensive gin and a floral perfume that Emily didn't own. He looked disheveled, but wore a smirk of victory. Behind him stepped Chloe, the woman from the party. She was wearing one of Emily's silk robes, her eyes wandering over the expensive furniture as if she already owned it. "Oh, you're still here," Liam said, his voice flat, devoid of the fake charm he used in public. "I thought you'd have the decency to be in the basement by now." Chloe giggled, leaning against the kitchen island. "Liam, babe, don't be mean. She has to make us breakfast first, right?" Emily didn't look up from the coffee. "The coffee is ready, Liam, and the papers are on the table." Liam's eyes narrowed. He walked over to the manila envelope and tossed it aside. "You weren't supposed to open that. But it doesn't matter. You're signing the transfer today, Emily. The dojo is dead weight. It's a pile of rotting wood on a prime piece of real estate. My father is buried on that land," Emily said quietly. "Then we'll move him," Liam snapped. "Or we'll pave over him. I don't care. I have debts and that land is my ticket out. You owe me this." Think of all the years I spent taking care of an orphan like you." Chloe walked up to Emily, her hand reaching out to mockingly pat Emily's cheek. "Listen to your husband, honey. You're lucky he even let you stay this long. A woman like you. You're just not built for this world. You're too simple." As Chloe's hand touched Emily's face, time seemed to slow down. Emily's pulse didn't speed up. It slowed. A calm, icy wave washed over her. In her mind, she saw the strike. She saw the pressure point on Chloe's wrist. She saw how easily she could snap the woman's arm before Liam could even blink. But she didn't. Not yet. Instead, Emily moved her head just half an inch. Chloe's hand slipped, missing her cheek entirely. The younger woman stumbled, losing her balance on her high heels. "Careful," Emily whispered. "The floor is slippery." Chloe hissed, embarrassed. "Liam, she pushed me." "I didn't touch her, Liam," Emily said, her voice terrifyingly steady. Liam stepped closer, his face inches from Emily's. "Sign the papers by 5 p.m., or I'll have the locks changed while you're out buying groceries. And don't bother calling a lawyer. I've already bought the best ones in the city. You have nothing." He turned and led Chloe upstairs, their laughter echoing like the sound of breaking glass. Emily waited. She took a sip of the bitter black coffee. She walked to the living room and picked up a small, antique vase Liam's mother had gifted them. It was a priceless Ming Dynasty replica. She held it for a moment, feeling its weight. Then she let it go. It didn't shatter. With a movement too fast for the human eye to track, Emily's foot swept out, catching the vase an inch above the marble floor. She balanced it on the tip of her toe, her leg held in a perfect horizontal line. She stood there for a full minute, motionless, a master of her own gravity. Then she flicked her foot. The vase flew into the air, spinning. She caught it gently with one hand and placed it back on the mantel. "Nothing," she repeated to the empty room. She went to her laptop. She didn't open a browser. She opened a command terminal. Her fingers flew across the keys, bypassing firewalls she had helped build for the government years ago. Accessing Sterling Holdings offshore accounts. Status locked. Emily's status admin. Liam thought he was a billionaire. He didn't realize that 3 years ago, when he asked his simple wife to help him set up his digital security, she had built a backdoor. She hadn't just watched him. She had been his silent guardian. And now, she was his silent executioner. She saw the transactions. Liam was funneling money to a man named Kovac, a known associate of the Balkan Syndicate. The gambling debts weren't just big. They were lethal. If Liam didn't pay by the end of the week, Kovac wouldn't just take the land. He would take Liam's life. "You're in over your head, Liam," she murmured. She pulled out her burner phone. The message she had sent last night, awake, had a reply. "The Dragon's Nest is compromised. Kovac's men are moving tonight to scout the property. If you aren't there to defend it, it burns." Emily felt a cold fire ignite in her chest. She walked to the closet and pulled out a nondescript black hoodie and cargo pants. She removed her wedding ring and placed it on the kitchen counter, right in the center of the red ink on the dojo map. Liam wanted a war. He wanted to take the one place where she felt her father's spirit. He had pushed the quiet girl too far, and he had no idea that the invisible woman was the only thing standing between him and the monsters he had invited into his life. Emily stepped out into the rain. She didn't take the car. She disappeared into the trees, moving with the speed and silence of a shadow. The dragon was going home. And tonight, the scouts would learn that some nests are guarded by more than just wood and stone. The dragon's nest stood on a secluded hill, surrounded by ancient cedars that groaned under the weight of the storm. Once, it had been a place of vibrant life. The rhythmic thud of bare feet on wood, the sharp ki of students, the smell of cedar and sweat. Now it was a dark silhouette, its gates rusted, its windows like hollow eyes. Emily moved through the perimeter brush. She didn't look like a billionaire's wife anymore. Dressed in tactical black, her hair pulled tight, she was a ghost returning to haunt her own past. 3 black SUVs were parked haphazardly near the entrance. Flashlight beams cut through the rain, sweeping across the dojo's weathered walls. "Boss says burn it if the locks are too tough," a gravelly voice shouted over the wind. "He wants the land cleared for the surveyors by Monday. No building, no problems." Emily watched from the shadows of a weeping willow. There were 6 of them, professional cleaners for the Kovac syndicate. They carried crowbars, canisters of gasoline, and the casual arrogance of men who had never been told no. One of the men, a giant with a scarred neck, kicked the front door. The wood groaned but held. "Sturdy old shack. Grab the fuel. Let's see how it handles 100 gallons of premium." Emily's eyes narrowed. Her hand slid to her waist, feeling the frayed silk of her black dragon sash. The air around her seemed to drop 10 degrees. "The mind is the blade," her Sefue's voice whispered in her mind. "The body is merely the hilt." She didn't use a gun. She didn't need one. She stepped out of the shadows. She didn't run. She walked, a slow, rhythmic pace that drew their attention. The rain slicked her face, her eyes reflecting the flashlight beams like a predator's. "Hey, who the hell are you?" the giant shouted, shining his light directly into her eyes. Emily didn't blink. "You're trespassing on private property. Leave now and you might keep your legs." The men froze for a second, stunned by the sheer absurdity of a lone woman threatening 6 armed enforcers. Then the laughter started. It was the same laughter she had heard from Liam and his friends. Loud, mocking, and full of a fatal mistake. "Look at this!" the giant jeered, pulling a jagged combat knife. "Liam said his wife was a mouse. I didn't know the mouse had a temper. You lost, lady. Go back to your kitchen before you get hurt." He stepped toward her, reaching out a massive hand to grab her throat. Emily moved. It wasn't a scramble. It was a blur of geometric perfection. She didn't pull back. She stepped into his space. With a flick of her wrist, she redirected his momentum. Her palm struck his chin, a short, explosive burst of kinetic energy. The giant's head snapped back, his teeth shattered with a sickening crack. Before he could even register the pain, Emily swept his lead leg and drove her elbow into his solar plexus. 250 pounds of muscle hit the mud with a muffled thud. He didn't get up. He didn't even breathe. The silence that followed was heavier than the rain. "Kill her!" the man with the gas can screamed, reaching for a pistol tucked into his waistband. Emily didn't give him the chance. She lunged, staying low to the ground. She was a shadow in motion. She caught the second man's wrist before his gun was clear of the holster. A quick twist. The sound of a breaking radius bone echoed in the night. She grabbed the pistol as it fell, ejected the magazine with one thumb, and tossed the useless metal into the dark. She spun, her leg connecting with the third man's temple in a perfect crescent kick. He went down like a felled tree. The remaining 3 men hesitated, their easy job had turned into a nightmare. "What are you?" one of them shrieked, his voice cracking with terror. Emily didn't answer. She stood in a low-rooted stance. Her breathing was slow, deep, and terrifyingly calm. She looked at the gas canisters they had dropped. "You brought fire to my home," she said, her voice barely audible over the wind, yet it carried like thunder. "Now, you'll feel the heat." The three men charged at once. It was a mistake. Emily was a master of multi-directional combat. She moved like a dancer in a storm, blocking, striking, and pivoting. Every hit she delivered was surgical. She wasn't fighting to kill, she was fighting to dismantle. Within 90 seconds, the muddy earth was littered with Kovacs elite cleaners, broken, groaning, and utterly defeated. Emily stood over the man with the scarred neck who was struggling to crawl toward his SUV. She stepped on his hand, her boot pinning him to the earth. "Tell Kovac," she whispered, leaning down. "Tell him Liam Sterling doesn't own this land. I do. And if another one of his dogs steps foot on this hill, I won't just break their bones, I'll come for his empire." She grabbed the man's phone from his pocket, unlocked it with his thumb, and took a photo of the 6 men lying in the mud. She sent it to the top contact, Kovac. She watched the SUVs speed away, leaving their broken comrades behind. Emily turned toward the dojo. She walked to the door and touched the wood. It was cold and wet, but she felt the hum of the past beneath her palm. She wasn't just protecting land. She was reclaiming her identity. But as she stood there, her burner phone buzzed. A new message. "Liam just signed a second contract. He didn't just sell the land, Emily. He sold you. Kovac isn't coming for the dojo anymore. He's coming for the house. Chloe is the bait." Emily's eyes went cold. Liam's greed had finally crossed the point of no return. He had tried to sell his wife to the syndicate to save his own skin. She turned back toward the city. The dragon had defended her nest. Now it was time to burn the palace down. The drive back to the city was a blur of neon lights and rhythmic windshield wipers. Emily didn't go through the front gates. She used the service entrance, moving through the kitchen like a shadow passing through a dream. The house was no longer a home. It was a hunting ground. Upstairs, she could hear the clinking of crystal and the low rumbling laughter of men who thought they had already won. She didn't head for the living room immediately. Instead, she went to the security hub in the basement. With a few rapid keystrokes, she bypassed the external monitoring and activated the hidden ear protocol she had installed months ago. Every room in the house was now being recorded. High-definition audio and video were streaming directly to a secure cloud server, mirrored to 3 different global news agencies, waiting for her final command to publish. She stepped into the grand living room. The scene was repulsive. Liam was sitting on his leather throne, a glass of Blue Label scotch in his hand. Opposite him sat a man who looked like he was carved out of cold granite, Victor, Kovac's right hand. Between them sat Chloe, looking pale and nervous, realized she was no longer the mistress of the house, but a bargaining chip. "Ah, the mouse returns," Liam sneered, not even looking up. "You're late, Emily. Victor has been waiting. We were just discussing your future." Emily stood in the doorway, the hood of her black jacket still damp from the rain. She looked small, isolated, and completely unimpressive. "I told you I wouldn't sign the papers, Liam." Liam laughed, a jagged, ugly sound. "The papers? Emily, darling, the papers are yesterday's news. Since you were so stubborn about the dojo, I had to find another way to settle my debt with Mr. Kovac. You see, Victor's boss has a very exclusive club. They appreciate women with your pedigree. Quiet, obedient, and completely untraceable. Chloe let out a small gasp of horror. Even she hadn't realized Liam was capable of this. Victor leaned forward, his eyes scanning Emily like a piece of livestock. "She is thin," he remarked in a heavy accent. "But she has good bone structure. My employer will find a use for her. The debt is settled, Sterling. Hand her over, and the dojo property is yours to pave." The flashing blue and red lights of the police cruisers danced against the marble pillars of the Sterling mansion, turning the symbol of wealth into a crime scene. Liam was being led out in handcuffs, his expensive silk shirt torn, his face a mask of pure, pathetic terror. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am?" Liam shrieked at the officers. An FBI agent holding a tablet with Emily's live stream still playing looked at him with disgust. "We know exactly who you are, Mr. Sterling. A man who sells human beings is a man who has no name." Emily stood at the edge of the driveway, hidden by the shadows of the oak trees. She watched as they shoved Liam into the back of a squad car. She felt no joy, only a profound sense of closure. The furniture had finally moved and the house had collapsed, but the night wasn't over. A black armored sedan pulled up slowly, stopping just outside the police perimeter. The window rolled down halfway. A man with silver hair and eyes like frozen steel looked out. Kovac, the man who owned the city's shadows. He didn't look at the police. He looked directly at the spot where Emily was standing. He knew she was there. Emily stepped out of the shadows. She walked toward the car, stopping just a few feet away. The police were busy with Liam. They didn't notice the silent conversation happening 10 yards away. "You destroyed a very profitable arrangement tonight, Mrs. Sterling," Kovac said, his voice a low melodic growl. "I don't like losing money, and I certainly don't like having my men sent back to me in pieces." "Then you should pick better partners," Emily replied. "Liam was a coward. Cowards make for poor investments." Kovac leaned his head back, a small, cold smile playing on his lips. "True, but you are something else entirely. My men told me about the dragon. I thought it was a myth. A legend from the old wars. The legend is real," Emily said, her voice dropping an octave. "And the legend wants you to stay away from the hill. If I see your shadow near my dojo again, I won't send your men back in pieces. I won't send them back at all." Kovac stared at her for a long time. In the underworld, power recognizes power. He saw the way she stood, the perfect stillness of a master. He realized that even with his armed driver and the bulletproof glass, he wasn't safe. "The dojo is yours," Kovac said finally. "Consider it a gift for the entertainment you provided tonight. But stay out of the city's business, Dragon. The world is changing. Don't make yourself a target." "I am the one who picks the targets, Kovac," Emily said. "Remember that." The window rolled up, and the sedan hissed as it pulled away into the night. Kovac was gone. For now. 2 weeks later, the dragon's nest looked different. The rust had been scrubbed from the gates. The windows were clean, reflecting the bright morning sun. The smell of fresh cedar and incense, once again, filled the air. Emily stood on the wooden deck wearing a simple white jai. She looked at the horizon, where the city lay in the distance. Liam was in a maximum security facility, awaiting a trial that would ensure he never saw the sun again. Chloe had disappeared, likely back to the small town she came from, hopefully wiser. The burner phone in Emily's pocket vibrated. Sender unknown. The nest is secure, the dragon is free, but the world is still loud, Master. Are you ready for the next student? Emily looked down at the entrance to the dojo. A young girl, no older than 15, stood at the gate. She looked bruised, her eyes full of the same fear Emily had carried for 3 years. The girl clutched a backpack and looked up at the dojo as if it were a temple of miracles. Emily smiled, a real, genuine smile. She walked down the steps and opened the gate. She didn't say, "Who are you?" or "What do you want?" Instead, she bowed, a deep, respectful bow of one warrior to another. "Welcome," Emily said. "Inside these walls, no one is invisible. Inside these walls, you will find your voice." As they walked into the dojo together, the wind picked up, whispering through the ancient cedars. The quiet wife was dead. The black dragon was home. And for the first time in her life, Emily wasn't just surviving, she was leading. The trial of Liam Sterling wasn't just a legal proceeding. It was a national obsession. For weeks, the media called it the Gilded Cage case. But for Emily, it was just background noise as she sat in her father's dojo, sipping tea and watching the sun set over the mountains. On the final day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Liam sat at the defense table, his $5,000 suit hanging off his shrunken frame. He looked like a man who had aged 20 years in 20 days. He kept looking toward the back of the room, waiting for the woman he had called invisible to walk through the doors. But Emily never showed up. She didn't need to. Her voice was already there. The prosecution played the final piece of evidence, a hidden recording from the night of the Scouts' attack. It wasn't just video of the fight. It was a recording of Liam's voice on a burner phone, laughing as he gave the order. "Burn the dojo. If she's inside, let her stay there. It'll save me the cost of a divorce lawyer." The jury didn't even need an hour. Guilty on all counts. As the handcuffs clicked into place for the final time, Liam's lawyer leaned in and whispered, "There's more, Liam. The bankruptcy court just finished the audit. You don't have a penny left. Every asset, the mansion, the cars, the offshore accounts, it's all gone." "To the state!" Liam gasped, his voice breaking. "No," the lawyer said, looking at him with a mix of pity and awe. "To the silent partner listed in your original company charter. It turns out when you signed those papers 3 years ago, you didn't just give Emily a home. You unknowingly made her the 51% owner of everything you ever built. She didn't just take your freedom, Liam. She took your name." 1,000 miles away, Emily stood on the deck of a private boat, the wind whipping her hair. Beside her stood the young girl from the dojo, now looking stronger, her eyes bright with hope. Emily's phone buzzed, a notification from her bank. She didn't care about the numbers. She looked at the tablet in her hand, which showed a live feed of the Sterling mansion being demolished. In its place, a foundation was already being laid for the Safeway Memorial Youth Center, a sanctuary for at-risk women and orphans. She took her old wedding ring, the one she had retrieved from the Scotch glass, and looked at it one last time. It was a cold, lifeless piece of metal. With a flick of her wrist, a movement fueled by years of repressed strength, she threw it into the deep blue of the Pacific. "Master?" the young girl asked. "What do we do now?" Emily turned to her face radiating a peace that Liam could never have understood. "Now," Emily said, We stop fighting for survival. We start fighting for the ones who haven't found their voice yet. The screen fades to black as the Black Dragon logo appears, a symbol of protection, strength, and the power of silence. 6 months had passed since the name Liam Sterling had been scrubbed from the city's headlines. The mansion was gone, replaced by the rising steel beams of the Sefue Center. But for Emily, the real victory wasn't in the buildings. It was in the silence of the mountains. The dojo was no longer a secret. It wasn't a school for fighters. It was a sanctuary for the invisibles. On this morning, the air was crisp, scented with pine and the sharp, clean smell of the first frost. Emily stood at the front of the training hall. Behind her were 20 women, teachers, students, survivors. They didn't move like victims anymore. They stood with their weight centered, their eyes clear, their spirits anchored. A sleek black car pulled up to the gate. It wasn't Kovacs. It was a government vehicle. A woman in a sharp suit stepped out, Director Holloway of the National Security Agency. She walked up the stone path, her heels clicking against the pebbles, stopping only when she reached the edge of the wooden deck. She looked at Emily, then at the women training behind her. "I spent 10 years trying to track down the Black Dragon after you vanished from the field, Emily," Holloway said, her voice full of professional respect. "I never expected to find you playing the role of a trophy wife in a suburban mansion." Emily didn't stop her movements. She finished a slow, perfect strike before turning. "It was the best cover I ever had. Even the government didn't look for a ghost in a gold-plated cage. The world is getting dangerous again, Emily," Holloway said, stepping closer. "Kovac was just a small fish. There are shadows moving that require your specific skill set. We want you back. Full pardon, unlimited budget, your own team." Emily looked back at her students. She saw the young girl she had taken in, Sarah, now leading a group of newcomers through their basic stances. Sarah's bruises were gone, replaced by a fierce, quiet confidence. "I already have a team, Director," Emily replied. "You're training civilians," Holloway scoffed. "We need soldiers." "I'm training people to never be victims again," Emily said, her voice echoing through the hall. "A soldier follows orders. A dragon protects the nest. My answer is no. I'm done being a weapon for people who sit behind desks." Holloway sighed, but there was a hint of a smile on her face. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, encrypted data drive, laying it on the wooden railing. "In case you change your mind," Holloway said, "or in case the shadows come looking for the nest, we both know Kovac was just the beginning." As the director walked away, Emily picked up the drive. She didn't open it. She didn't need to. She knew that her peace would always be something she had to defend. She turned back to her class. "Again," Emily commanded. The sound of 20 voices rose in a single powerful ki that shook the leaves from the trees. The story of the quiet wife ended that day. The story of the guardian had just begun. In a high-security prison cell 300 miles away, Liam Sterling sat in the dark, startled by the sound of a distant thunderclap. He looked at his hands, the hands that used to hold power, now empty and trembling. He realized then that Emily hadn't just taken his money or his freedom. She had taken his reality. He was the one who was invisible now, and on the mountain. The dragon breathed, watching over the world, waiting in the silence.